The Great Lakes may not have sharks or dolphins or whales, but we do have shipwrecks that make the lakes into a kind of otherworldly museum. Partner station Milwaukee PBS brings us the story.
Well, shipping was on the Great Lakes was really the way we were founded. Buffalo to Milwaukee was an immigration path. Prior to the railroads in Chicago, Milwaukee was actually larger than Chicago and was really an immigration disembarkment point. And then, even after the railroads hit Chicago, it was the trade and the commerce using water as the interstate highway system. Water was the trade lane well into the 20th century on the Great Lakes. But really, it was the waterways and the shipping industry that built up and settled this region of the country using the Great Lakes.
Ready? I'm a captain, and I take scuba divers out on the Great Lakes to shipwrecks that have been here for hundreds of years. The reason I started diving is because I got really interested in the history of the shipwrecks and the stories behind the shipwrecks. I wanted to know more, I wanted to go see them, what's left of them. All right, you good? No shrimp. Dive. The Prins Willem is one of the most dived shipwrecks around Milwaukee for a number of reasons. It's intact still. And also it's accessible to most people because the wreck starts at about 55 feet. We are very lucky in the Great Lakes because the water is fresh and cold. On the bottom it's usually always 40 degrees. It doesn't change, so the shipwrecks are preserved. They don't deteriorate, they don't fall apart like in the ocean.
Prins Willem V was a regular visitor to Milwaukee. It was on its third of what was going to be another 4 voyages in 1954 when it left Milwaukee late in the afternoon. And as it headed out a mile and a half or so outside of the Milwaukee breakwater, it collided with a fuel barge. It was carrying fuel oil. This fuel barge actually punctured like a 20-foot gash in the side of the Prins Willem, and it sank. But before it did go down, the Coast Guard cutter Hollyhock from Milwaukee came out and made sure everyone was rescued. So there were no casualties during the loss. What's really interesting about the Prins Willem historically was that it was actually built in 1939 near Rotterdam. And it was actually in the process during World War II of being converted into a vessel by the German Navy. And in 1944, as Rotterdam was under assault, and D-Day assault, the Germans actually sank it near Rotterdam to kind of slow the oncoming Allied forces. And it stayed there until like 1947 when it was raised, cleaned up, rebuilt, and put into service and trade, ultimately with the Great Lakes becoming its trading route.
You can take the open water diver to here, but you can also take the guy who does 300-foot dives on a regular basis, and they're going to love this wreck because it's a really good one.
It starts at 55 feet. You know, you jump in the water, you go down, and there it is, right there. As divers, we get trained properly, and if we follow the proper protocol, it's a very safe sport. My advice would be get out, get certified, get experience, find buddies you can trust, you can dive with, and just have fun.
These are time capsules. When you go down there and you see these wrecks, because it's a moment frozen in time when they go to the bottom. It's the only place you can see them. There's no museums that have all these old wooden schooners. And there's schooners that went down in the 1800s that look like the day they went down. Sometimes suddenly it'll hit you that, oh my goodness, all these people died on this wreck. You get somber a little bit about it, and you deal with respect.
We have a law in the Great Lakes, you cannot take artifacts off of ships. So a lot of the ships still have artifacts on them. People from the East Coast, West Coast, from the ocean, they take things off of ships, so then there's nothing to see. On these ships you can go and see still some china, you can see the wheels, see bells on some of them, masts standing upright.
If they could raise them, they tried to raise them because they want to reuse them and sail them again. With Prins Willem, they wanted to raise it, they tried to raise it, and it was just proved too difficult to do it. In some cases, it's incredibly expensive, and in other cases, sometimes in raising them, you disturb them, and they are filled in some cases with a lot of fuel oil. In some cases, it's more of a tomb situation. Let's keep it entombed and encased.
Zero 91.5.
Now we are just outside of the main gap. This is the main gap between the Milwaukee Harbor and Lake Michigan. Our goal is the Prins Willem, which is about 3 nautical miles offshore, and we'll be sampling every mile on the way out.
So the Seki gave us what, 10.5? No, 9. 9, and the other side?
Other side 6.7.
6.7. So the quagga mussels started invading in Lake Michigan around 2003 in a substantial rate. And when you see the shipwreck, you'll start noticing that in between the mussels, now you can have algae. So the algae are going to be also attaching to there, and what happens is that you have organic matter now depositing into your shipwreck, it starts degrading it as well. So very slowly, but you start changing the characteristics of the surfaces.
3, 2, 1, sample. 121050, number 10. Now we're going to deploy a remotely operated vehicle, or ROV, that we will use to collect samples from the bottom. We'll also use it to survey the shipwreck and see what kinds of changes have occurred since last time we were here. Here we are looking at the edge of the Prins Willem, and we're near a railing, and you can see that the surfaces are largely encrusted with a growth, which is mostly mussels. There are several ways in which the animals alter the shipwrecks, and in the case of a shipwreck, any alteration is permanent. Stressed by currents, for example, during a storm, and pulled off, they will pull a small piece of wood along with them.
Most of the shipwrecks in Lake Michigan are completely covered with quagga mussels, and that is really causing the breakdown of the shipwrecks. It's become accelerated. Really, our understanding of those ships also develops over time as new technology becomes available to us. We try to use that to really understand how these ships are, to monitor their status, and then also to protect them for future generations to come visit and enjoy.
At Great Lakes Now, we aim to cover the Great Lakes region and the people who live here, like you. Please follow us on social media, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and sign up for our newsletter at greatlakesnow.org.